Hey, welcome to the Worship Master class with citizens and saints. Thanks for coming. This is really cool. I'm really encouraged that you guys are here. By a show of hands, how many of you are like actively in a worship band in your core? Okay, cool. Take a look. So cool. And how many? Raise your hand if you didn't raise your hand. No, it's okay. So we're just gonna have like kind of an informal conversation with these guys, and they're gonna take it from here, and there'll be a Q&A. So if you have questions and all that kind of stuff, this is the perfect time to ask them. So turn it over to the guys.
Well, how you guys doing? Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us. By no means do we think that we're masters at what we do, but we just wanted to be able to have a conversation with you guys, and hopefully it's a great opportunity for you to ask questions. Any question is fair game. We love talking about the theology of worship, but we also like talking about the practical side of things too. But before we do that, I thought you guys should probably get to know us a little bit, so you kind of know what kind of questions to ask maybe. So anyway, we'll start down here. This is Spencer on the end. Spencer, how long you been playing? You should talk a little bit about yourself. Tell us how long you been playing guitar. What's your story a little bit? Tell us a little bit.
Hello. I've been playing guitar probably 16 years or so. Yeah, I didn't grow up in the church. I think that might be a little.
What was your first album? We'll do that. That'll be a good question.
First CD?
First CD that you ever bought?
It was a gift with my first boombox. It was Alan Jackson Greatest Hits. So that was sweet. Maybe a fun, interesting fact about me in the context of this is not growing up in the church. I was invited to a youth group in high school, and the second week there, I was actually playing in the worship band because I knew someone coincidentally in it. I knew it was a 100-person youth group. I probably knew 2 people, and I happened to know that the guy leading it, and was a real catalyst to me developing the relationships that was a huge role in me coming to know Christ and stuff. So that's kind of a fun thing about me and worship and the role it's played in my life. Just getting to be a part of that and the relationships it can build.
Sweet. Nathan, first CD.
Oh, man. I think I was like 6th grade. It was Garth Brooks, The Hits. Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
What's with the country thing, guys?
Just my family listened to it, and it just happened.
He's from California, too, by the way, which I think is kind of weird that you bought a country album. But
Yeah, so from California, like Zach said, raised in the church, played bass about 10 years now. So started playing when I was like 17-ish.
How long you had that mustache?
I think like 2, maybe 2.5 years now, yeah? Does that sound about
I was
right?
trying to set you up there, man. Just
Long time.
Birth.
Time. Can't get rid of it now.
birth.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Hey, I'm Adam. I'm from Wyoming.
First
and
CD.
My first CD was the very first Offspring CD. It was a self-titled Offspring CD. I've been playing drums for like 14 years. And yeah, my wife and I have lived in Seattle for about 5 years now. It's a good time.
We were actually talking about this on the plane, actually, about the Offspring. How
Yeah. Oh.
did you guys ever listen to them? You guys know who they are, but like how they're like a classic example of a band that started as like this like whatever punk band,
Yeah.
and then just transitioned into writing some of the worst pop songs.
Caught that
we have ever
MTV
known.
fish
Pretty
hook,
fly
and
for
it just
a white guy.
just left.
Wow, it's
Yeah.
just-
Exactly.
Terrible
But
songs,
yeah.
but they made money from them. I guess.
I know it.
Right?
I know it.
So, from Adam. Adam, you supported.
I paid
them,
at least
and
$10
that's- yeah.
into their millions.
So you guys can thank Adam for.
I'm Brian. I didn't start the band with the guys, but I've been playing with the band for probably a year or so, year and a half maybe, I don't know, kind of on and off. And then it sounds like dating or something, on and off for
It's
a
kinda
while,
like
and
that.
we've been serious for
It is Valentine's Day
about
today,
9 months,
so.
and but I got to know these guys. We all went to the same church together, and I got to produce some recordings for the band, and just kind of turned into. After a while, Zach kind of asked me to start sitting in playing keys, and kept doing that. So, okay, I guess the first CD question.
Yes.
The first CDs that I actually bought were a part of the. It's kind of a tough question to answer because I think the first CDs I bought were, in the like when you sign up for the Columbia House membership, you get like 16 CDs for 1 cent. And then every month after that, it's one CD for like $29 a month. And I always forgot to cancel those for some reason. But the memorable ones were Oasis, What's the Story, Morning Glory, and Alanis Morissette, Jagged Little Pill. So, yeah, there we go.
90s. That's right.
Yeah.
I like that, man. So my name is Zach. My first CD I ever bought was The Wallflowers, and which was one of our favorite CDs. I don't know why I bought that, because then probably about a month later, I think I bought Hootie and the Blowfish, so it kind of lessens the blow. Or actually, it worsens. It makes it really bad. So I'm not from Seattle. I'm from Maryland. My wife Natalie and I, we have 3 kids. She's from Kentucky, so every now and then we come back sort of this way to this insane cold weather. In fact, I think every time Brian has walked outside today, he started coughing. So it's so cold.
Yeah, the air's cold.
So
It does something to your lung.
yeah,
Z.
lungs. You do have more than one, that's right. So yeah, like Brian said, we all met in Seattle at the same church, serving in different capacities. One thing that I think might be helpful for a little context as well, that maybe some of the guys didn't mention. So I was a worship pastor at the church that we all were part of, and so that's sort of the way that some of this came together. So I'll give you a little bit of the story. So my family and I moved to Seattle, and the church that we were part of, they did something that was more of a band model. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with that or not, but versus like a worship team where you have a rotating musicians, they just decided to go this other way. And so that was my first job, is start a band. And I got there, and just through different interactions, Nathan and Adam, another guy, Nate, who was in the band originally and still kind of is it from time to times, we all started the band and started writing and arranging songs. And along the way, in fact, Spencer's first time ever playing with us was, he didn't actually play guitar. There's an In Tenderness music video, and when you do those videos, you don't actually like play, you're just playing to the recording. And Spencer is fake playing with this and that. So that was his first introduction. Brian helped produce that as well. So we've all been, Brian was a worship director as well at the church we were part of. He did that you still lead worship often, but as in that role in particular, like 8 years probably? 9 years? Something, whatever. Just throw out a number, anything. 74 years.
Yeah, like 6 or 20 years.
Yeah.
Can't remember.
So Brian was a worship leader. Spencer was a worship leader as well. All 3 of us at different times had different bands. So if you ever followed any of the Mars Hill bands, Brian led the band Sing Team. Spencer had a band named Kin. And so just a lot of music and interactions that we've had together. Then outside of that, Spencer we worked together at the church for a while. He's now a freelance web developer, and so he's making websites happen. He's making the internet. You're just making the internet happen. So he does that, and then when we come out and play, so so this isn't like Spencer's main thing. Nathan over there, he's going to school for engineering, producing, music, business as well, a little bit of that too. Additionally, he's what do you call yourself, a baker? Is that like am I like belittling you by calling?
That's like a loose term.
Is that a low blow to call you a baker?
I don't really bake. I just throw muffins in.
Okay, he just throws muffins in the oven. So anyway,
Is that so? The facial hair is more a trade. It's like an industry. Yeah, industry standard.
industry. You either
No laughs. Not a single laugh out there.
They're
Crickets.
they're like
you.
you either keep the mustache or you lose your health insurance. Your choice. So guess I'll
You
have the
got about
mustache.
40 laughs on that, and I
That was
didn't
good,
get a
man.
single laugh.
We'll get there, man. Thanks, man. I liked your joke, man. I laughed.
Thanks, man.
So yeah, Nathan. So when he's not, when we're not playing as a band, he's doing that. Adam works at a record label. Actually, the record label that we are a part of, Tooth and Nail. He kind of oversees. He's basically, if you've ever heard of Solid State Records, they put out a lot of metal, hardcore. Any other genre in there?
Just rock.
Rock. Just rock. Just like to rock. That's Adam. So Adam he is Solid State Records. So he oversees a lot of that. Brian is a producer, a songwriter, an engineer, mixes, does all those different things. And he did that at Mars Hill for a good bit of years. So basically from 2000, what would you say, 11 through till what? 2000, what year are we in? 14. He produced every single one of those records that came out, I would say, right, with the exception of maybe one or so. So that was probably 14 different projects, 15 different projects, 14 or 30, 6 or 20, different projects along the way, and now he does that on his own and is producing a number of different bands as well. And so I share all that because I want you to see that like we're all like we do this band together because it was started as with a core conviction that we wanted to. I mean, really, it comes down to our name. Like we knew that we're going to be a worship band, but part of it was we wanted to have a name that involved. That wasn't so focused on the band, but was actually focused on the people of God. And so that's where we get that name from Ephesians 2. And it's the idea that all of us are coming together and we're getting to sing these songs to Jesus as one group. And it's not the band that's facilitating that. It's not even necessarily the people singing that are facilitating that. It's the Holy Spirit that's working through us. And he's given us this one of many ways to express our love and adoration and our laments and our prayers and all these different things through singing, through clapping, through shouting, through this fellowship that we have together. And so that's something that we did, we started doing as a band from the beginning, and that's something we want to continue doing and will continue doing as long as that door remains open. But at the same time, too, we have other jobs and different things that we're doing to support our families. So I think it's helpful for you to see our different backgrounds and know that we're not just like a, touring band that's out all the time away from our families, but we actually have a pretty decent rhythm to where we're not gone a whole lot and we're able to still serve and the churches that, that we're a part of. And so it's a really cool thing. Were you going to say something? Were you going to make
I don't remember.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so we started all at the same church together, and we're
You got him, man. That was a great non-joke.
Why is there laughter now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just kind of gonna add and keep filling in that. Yeah, so we all started at the same church together, but we're all at different churches now, and it's pretty cool because we get to continue kind of sharing this fellowship together and getting to visit a lot of different churches and we didn't know until this weekend that the Salvation Army was a church. And so it was just like stuff like this, getting to know different people in different contexts and different denominations, and do that for all of us who are attending different churches now, like, has been a really cool experience for us. And yeah.
Yeah, I think it's actually really cool because with the band, we'll go to, like a couple weeks ago, we did a youth conference for the Vineyard Church, and then before that, we were doing a worship conference for Calvary Chapel, and then here this, to see like that I get that this is a territory of people, but I'm getting that this idea from having lots of conversations with you guys that you guys are pretty connected as well, which is really interesting and cool. And so it's neat to go to these different like denominations and different groups and see that, like, wow, it's amazing to see what God is doing, but also that we all are, like, it's crazy what music does too in that process, how it like unifies us all and centers us on Jesus, and it gives us the ability to, in a lot of ways, to communicate things that we wouldn't maybe even know how to communicate. But yet there's been a lot of great, writers and so many. I was talking to Eric about this, how like hymns are such a rich part of your guys' history. I think that's such an amazing thing for us. That was our first sort of goal that we set out to do, was let's arrange hymns. Let's we think that there's such rich theology there. I've always seen it as like, our ancestors before us carrying this torch, and we're meant to continue carrying that we're not meant to just look at that as something as a part of the past, but knowing that those songs are rooted in Scripture, which is transformative, that we get to continue on that work that God started through them, which is really cool. And we get to still write and arrange and do all that too. So my hope in this conversation is that after you kind of heard some of this, like I said, we love talking about the theology of worship. We love talking about the practical side, the creative side. Whatever question you would have, I'd love to open it up now and just talk a little bit about some of that stuff. So,
Even though we're like up here with microphones, it'd be cool if this was like, we could have a conversation and just kind of any questions that sort of spark conversations that we can keep having.
So, if you got a question, there you go. Yeah, I think it'd be cool for some of the other guys to hop in on this. But
Sure.
one thing sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry. But one thing I was going to say, at least from my perspective, I was actually, as we were flying in, I was just finishing reading this book by Eugene Peterson called The Pastor. And I'll spare you the details. It's a great book. I think you should really read it, whether you want to be a pastor or not. It's just a really great, it's his memoir. And one of the things that I love as I'm reading this book is there's nothing like flashy about him. There's no like celebrity encounters, or he's not a celebrity necessarily. And I was struck with this idea that like it's really, I feel like what's really interesting about this group of guys is there's a lot of trust. And so I don't have to, like, when we're like playing, like it's not like a big like pep rally before we lead people, or like, all right guys, we're gonna get out there, make sure you smile, and it's just like not a bunch of like phony kind of stuff. Like we don't have to talk about that. It's like, hey, let's just get centered on, let's get centered around Jesus. Sometimes it's reading a passage together. Sometimes it's praying together. It looks like a lot of different things, but I think a lot of that is us entering in with the understanding that we are in relationship with Jesus. And it's pretty amazing when you just like are around people, when you can tell like, okay, the Holy Spirit, there's like fruit there, and when it's like, man, it really seems like there's some stuff going on. And when that's present, it's cool to have a lot of great conversations with these guys about that stuff too. So that's just my perspective, but I think it'd be cool to hear from some of you guys too.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it started in a really cool way because we were all going to the same church originally, and me and Nathan and his family and Zach and his family were actually in a community group together, and so we were meeting once a week and things like that, and getting to know each other well, even outside the band. But then, even now, I think as we've kind of gone to different churches in the area, it's just been cool to hang out a lot with each other outside of the band stuff, and to have our families hang out together, and our wives are all hanging out. Even tonight, I think they're all getting together, hanging. And so just something about doing life together and picking up people's kind of natural rhythms and things like that. I think just at the end of the day, doing Christian community, I think, is just about being known and knowing others selflessly. And so, as you do more things like this, and as we hang out at Super Bowl parties or whatever, that's kind of naturally happening through sort of a filter of staying focused on Jesus. So it's kind of a cool, natural thing.
One of you guys want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think Zach also does a great job just having that nice balance of, because he does trust us, there isn't a huge pep rally or something, or maybe emotionally based hype thing walking into us leading. But so often he won't necessarily try to prepare something special for us, but maybe just like what him and his wife happen to be going through in the Word together already, he'll just kind of maybe bust that out right before we're going out and just share kind of how that's been affecting him. And it just helps, I think, center us on Jesus by just opening up the Word real quickly. And so I think that's been really helpful for me. But it's also from a very level posture, I think, too, like as brothers coming out together to just worship. So
Totally. Yeah, I think what Spencer and Adam were saying is, like, I think it's just about being known, and I think it's especially with like our lives too now, like we're no longer all a part of the same church, and so we're also trying to invest in that community as well. And so it is just like a thing that naturally happens, which at least for my personality is way more invigorating and exciting versus something that feels really forced. And so it's just cool. And it's like, I know there's been multiple times where it's like Brian will open up the Bible and read a passage of something that like he's been reading and just wants to share with us right beforehand. Adam, Nathan, Spencer, different conversations we have at different times. I've probably never laughed harder with a bunch of people, but we've shared with some of these guys, I've shared some of the hardest, deepest things that I've had to wrestle through, or my wife and I have had to wrestle through. And like I've had multiple times where I'll just, after having like an argument with my wife or something, inevitably the next few moments I'm like hanging out with Brian, and there's been moments where I'm talking to him, he prays for me, and in that process the Holy Spirit like breaks me, and where I went into that, sharing that stuff with him, I'm like, oh man, my wife's, what's wrong with her? And then it turns from that to seeing like, wow, Holy Spirit convicting me of like, this is my sin. And that's just like a really cool thing about, I think, brotherhood and sisterhood in Christ, is that we get to pray for each other, and just discipleship just like naturally happening. So I think that's kind of the way that it's kind of worked out for us, which has been pretty cool. So cool. How about some other questions? That was a great question. Thank you. You should do the band, and I'll maybe talk about some of the other stuff. The band model, since you were a part of that for longer than any of us. Oh, you should. You're like, oh, I was.
So I think yeah. So the church that we were a part of, Mars Hill, we had multiple locations, and I kind of got to work with supporting a lot of our worship directors at the different churches, and something that we were just really found to be kind of a thing that we enjoyed doing, and it worked well for us, was doing kind of a band model of worship leadership. And what that was is that there's a leader who may be like the lead singer, but may not necessarily be, just kind of someone who rallied a group together that would be a worship leading band, and that band was kind of committed to doing it as a group together consistently. So it wasn't musicians kind of swapping in and out every week, but it was the same group that was leading every time. And instead of that same leader leading every week, it would kind of give opportunities for different worship leaders to be leading on different occasions. So I know a couple of our church locations had usually probably about 2 or 3 different bands, and so they would kind of do a rotation where they would play once every 2 or 3 weeks, I guess. And the cool thing about that, one cool thing I think about that model is there is kind of that consistent growing in relationship together as a group, which is really cool. But there are definitely lots of other ways to do it. But that was something that for that season for us was a cool thing. I know it was always really encouraging to me. The group that I led, we had probably about, with our families and stuff, kind of got to probably as many as like 20-ish people, and we would get together and every week, and one week we would just like have a meal together and study the Bible together, and then the next week we would rehearse the music that we're working on, and so that was a really special time for me and my family for sure. So yeah.
Also, one thing that I saw in terms of the congregation with the band model that I thought was really cool, as you had kind of different bands, it kind of maybe averaged out to say like every location had 2 or 3 or maybe 4 bands in rotation throughout a month. And it kind of naturally, since all of those bands were sort of different genres or had a lot of different arrangements of hymns and of songs, and then as a community at that church, amongst the locations, we did multiple of the other band's songs that they had written. It kind of, I think, killed a little bit of the mentality that wants to get a way of doing a song or a way of doing worship with a certain one style of music. And our minds are all kind of trained to want to lock into tradition and repetition and rhythm and things like that, and to kind of push away from change. And so one positive, it's not saying the band model is necessarily better, but I think a huge positive was just people always doing, 3 or 4 different versions of Amazing Grace versus, just one style that we're all used to and things like that. So
That was a really sweet thing about that. Yeah. And I think it was a cool way to kind of teach that music isn't like the mediator for worship of God. Like it's not, we don't need, it's so tempting for us to say like, oh dude, that one song, that's my jam. Like I get super close with God with that song. Like that's not true. Like it's something that God can use to draw us to himself. But it's just a tool. It's not the thing that actually puts us in relationship with God. And so I think that model really like helped encourage that, like discouraging the idolatry of I need this certain style of music or I need this certain song to be close with God.
Yeah, so I think on the flip side too, there's like, I mean, okay, there was a good bit of you that raised your hands that said you were involved in either worship leading or as musicians. Is for you guys, is it a band model? Is it worship team model? Is it a rotation of musicians? What are you guys familiar with or typically do? Great. One band, same musicians? Sure. Yeah. Did you have? That's right. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is that? I mean, in perhaps even where we were in Seattle, we were all three of us, or sorry, not three of us, but we were all we were basically a part of two, there was 15 churches, but we were part of, collectively, two different ones of that 15, and the one church we were at had a bunch of college students. That's where Citizens started, and then where Brian and Spencer spent most of their time, it was more of a collective. It was pretty many generations represented, but there was a lot of really talented musicians and creative people that came through there as well. And so I think it really does depend on like who you have. And I mean, we went through a season where we had 3 bands, and then because a bunch of kids graduated or like moved, we went from 3 bands to 1, and all of a sudden it was like, hey, I'm talking to Adam and Nathan, like, hey, you guys want to lead it every week for 52 weeks until we get another band? So that can be like one of the disadvantages sometimes to a band model. But then at the same time, maybe in a similar way, you guys feel that too, like some fatigue at times where it's like, all right, we have like 7 people and we're rotating, everyone's energized, they enjoy it, but then slowly like burnout and different things can start coming in. And I think that's where the biggest part that I've seen is just one of the cool things about the band model is that it's a discipleship opportunity. So you're investing in a guy or a girl that's going to lead a band, and then they're going to invest in that group. And so it's pretty fluid. And I think it's kind of cool too. Like every band that I've ever led while being at Mars Hill, eventually someone in that band wound up becoming a band leader of another band. And so there's also like that cool discipleship piece in that as well that I think is sometimes unexpected. Some people will go into it and you're like, I don't know if we'll ever have a band leader that comes out of this particular band. And then all of a sudden, you start seeing like these glimmers of leadership and wow, they're really good at communicating, or man, they've got a lot of really great ideas and discipleship, or they really know the word and they know how to like shepherd their group. So there's a lot of things to it. I don't think that there's one way that's better than another. I just think it's kind of just depends on what makes the most sense for where you are and the people that you have. Because the worst thing you can do is like force the band model. I've talked to a lot of people that have tried to do that, and it's been not very well received because there's not enough people to make it happen, and so it just creates it kind of creates this scenario that maybe isn't as helpful as just having a worship team. So, cool. Sam, do you have a question there?
So we have like one evening a week. It's usually Thursdays. We do like rehearsals when we're not going out somewhere, and kind of just come together and kind of prepare for whatever's coming up. In the past, before we've been operating like we're operating now, when we were serving in the church, it was actually Thursday night still, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we would come together and we kind of knew what the sermon would be like, and we'd always try to make sure whatever songs we chose really supported what the sermon was on and just really reinforced those themes. And a lot of the times we would do arrangements and kind of write 1 or 2 new arrangements in a night and kind of be there till 11 at night. Or
I think one time we did 5.
five new arrangements. I was like 5 in the morning. I don't remember that.
Yeah, I think our first rehearsal ever, we were there till like 1 in the morning, and we got through like 5 arrangements. Are you talking like right when the band started?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Yeah,
That was like that's the downside where
Yeah.
it's like we need songs,
Yeah.
and yeah, unfortunately the 5 arrangements we had just weren't that good. weren't that good. So,
But yeah, so I mean, those were the early days, and we would just have to grind long hours. But now it's kind of a little bit more consistent. We have kind of like direction on what we're working towards, and just kind of get tighter on specific songs, or if we're working on any new arrangements. Like when it comes to writing new music, a lot of times it's Zach and Brian. They do a lot of the writing and arranging. Zach will come with an idea, kind of just piece together on reason, or just a lot of phone memos. So many songs came from phone memos, and we just kind of sit together and write and just kind of work together towards that. Everyone has kind of a specific strength or a piece that they play in that. So
yeah, I would say especially on that creative process, it's kind of cool because we all have like different backgrounds and how like bands that we've played in or like musical upbringings, and so even now, I mean, I still feel like we're still like I just think it takes a really long time before you're like locked in like on the same page creatively. And it's funny, like Brian and I used to joke that whatever idea he had, I had the exactly opposite idea, you know, so or the exact opposite idea. And but I think that's just part of the process. And so the other thing too for us is that we consider our primary calling to serve the church and to write songs that are for singing. And so the thing that is without the lyrics in our songs, like we're not whatever we're saying we're doing, that no longer has any type of connection. Like it has to be first and foremost us being rooted in writing songs that are gospel centered and are rooted in God's word. And so that's the huge part of what we do. And then the music being what complements that, if you will. And so it's certainly it's a different type of process, I feel like, than other bands. Like Brian and I were talking about this the other day. It's not like, when you're writing a song that people are going to sing, it's not like all 5 of us can get into a room and we're like, just start yelling out like a lyric concept and just think that that's going to piece together a song, all right, Nathan's like, all right, Jesus. And then, I don't know, like, you just start yelling out like random things that it's just like, all right, sweet, we've got a song about, I don't know. I don't know. I have nothing right now. Yeah, Jesus creating snow or something like that. Yeah, we're working on that one. I'll let you know how it goes. But anyway, like that has to. There's a more intentional process in that of like sitting down, writing lyrics, and then out of that developing melodies. We start arranging as a band, and then perhaps the melodies change because the music that the different guys are contributing is more compelling and it's creating something that's actually better, so we adjust the melodies or something like that. So I don't know. We don't necessarily have a set way of doing it. Yeah, please.
I feel like every time we've every time we've worked on a new song, it's been different. Like we do different things all the time. Sometimes just super collaboratively. Sometimes it's Zach like has ideas for all of us to be doing, and we try them, and they all work, and it's like, oh, cool, that's great. Or sometimes Zach has ideas for all of us, and they don't work, and so we all come up with different things, and then it turns into something different. So, yeah, we're still kind of finding our rhythm, I think, in that. So, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. I think, um, I think that you're probably right as far as like the trends on that stuff go. Yes. Next question. Yeah, I think as far as like, are you asking kind of what our sort of thoughts on that are, or what we try to do, or? Okay. Sorry, I don't know why I started talking. I have nothing to say right now. I think, um, like Zach was saying, like our goal is to be doing songs that, for the most part, will be helpful in singing in the local church, and so we try to be mindful of that as we're writing lyrics and melodies, and you can either kind of do the guys sing sort of lowish, and the girls are the octave up, kind of singing normal-ish, or the guys sing like super high, and the girls sing super low, and we all sing together, and I think that's great too. And I'm just rambling. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think I I one thought I had, I guess, on that is that it's hard for me to think about all the different ways that the different movements and trends that have gone on over the past, like you were saying, like 20, 25 years. Um, I guess the thing that I'm seeing more and more, and maybe this is bad, I don't know, but it's not bad actually. I think it's just you have to be careful with it. Is I just try and filter everything through is does the song communicate truth, and is it edifying to the body? And then I think the second question is, okay, yes, it is lyrically, but then maybe musically, you know, it might seem like it's more performance based or some other way. Like, I don't know that I'm thinking about it a whole lot in those ways, so it's kind of a challenging question for me to answer in that way. I would say, though, that I think that perhaps what I feel like all people that are writing songs for the church should start with is, in fact, Brian actually has a really great, what would you like rubric, or what would you call that? Like a guideline for when writing a song. Is it clear? Is it true? Is it clear? Is it compelling? Correct? Is that the right order? And so, is it? I mean, true. Is it rooted in the Word? I'm just gonna do this for you real quick. So, you look tired. I just figured I'd. Is it true? Yeah. So, is it rooted in Scripture? Is it clear? So not that like is the Bible clear, but is the way that you're writing it actually clear? And then is it compelling? Is it singable? Is it actually written in a way that provokes someone to engage with? Because a lot of times, perfect example, that book I was talking about earlier, The Pastor, Eugene Peterson. If you never heard of him, he's the dude who translated he wrote, or I guess you could say, translated the Message Bible. And it's interesting that I've never really read the Message, so I can't speak to whether like its credibility or anything, but I would suspect it's good because he's a pretty solid guy. One of the things I loved about it is he just said, I wanted to translate it into a way, and he's a guy who has a ton of background in Hebrew and Greek and Aramaic, and he just said, I want to translate into a way of like the way that my congregation like talked about like God and theology, which I thought was really cool. He basically did that for his church of 500 people. And I think that's really what songwriting is I'm going to write a song. I'm reading this passage in Psalm 139, and I'm going to write it in a way that I think is how our church would maybe talk about this or communicate it, and this is the way that we'll sing it, because those are the people that we have in mind, is the people that God has called us to lead. And so I think that is, it's not answering your question, but I guess it's just more like, it seems like that's a pretty helpful way about writing music for the church. And I think that there are some people that don't do it that way, and that doesn't necessarily make it wrong. I just think that there's a whole lot more benefit to knowing the people that you're, like knowing that this is meant to serve people and knowing who those people are, I think goes a long way. Because then okay, we're like, for us, like for instance, like some people, you might hear some of our songs and be like, wow, they're a little bit high. And some of that's just because one of the first songs we ever arranged was in tenderness. And originally one of the guys in the band, he had rearranged that hymn and rewrote it. And it was a lot lower, and we're like, man, let's just up the key a whole lot, and we're just going to shout it. And we were in this old church building, a little bit smaller than this, and it was pretty special, like the stuff that would come out of that. And you'd hear a bunch of like 18-year-old guys who clearly still hadn't gone through puberty and singing, and it was just like, it was a really cool thing. And so I think like within that context, it made a lot of sense. It is a little bit challenging though, as soon as that goes out to a wider audience, and that's where I would say like people should take the liberty of dropping the key if they think it's not the best fit for their congregation. So, were you going to say something else? Were you thinking that? Yeah.
I think another really important thing with that is just thinking about, why do we sing in church? That's like the question that we've got to go back to with that. And the answer for us as Christians is like, the Bible commands it, and we've seen the evidences of, as we do that, God uses that to soften our hearts, to change our hearts, and to remind us that we're doing it all together, that we're his kids together. And I think the unique challenge that kind of comes up with the changing sort of music traditions is kind of, for the first time in maybe like the history of humankind, it's like not something that's a part of our culture naturally to be singing together communally. Like up until maybe 50 years ago or something like that, that would still be a very natural part of like people hanging out together, is just like singing songs, when you get together for dinner or whatever. I know like my grandma, she would just like always be singing these goofy little songs or whatever, and that's just kind of a part of, and even many places around the world that's still the case today. And it's just for us now in this particular time, it feels like something that's a little unnatural culturally, but still what God is calling us to be doing. And so I think people are just trying to figure out what that looks like. How do we lead people well through that, and invite people into the awesome opportunity to be singing as a community that they might be uncomfortable with upon like first coming into the church, And so I think everybody's kind of trying to figure out what that looks like. So I think that's kind of, for me, it seems like some of the basis of that particular challenge. Spencer, were you going to say something?
You guys so nailed it.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
I'm all
for
good.
talking too much.
What up? Zach and I both are really big fans of an artist named Ryan Adams, not Brian Adams. Yeah, right. So I've been listening to a lot of that. A lot of us in the band like old band called the Cardigans. They got a few incredible albums. I've been digging Manchester Orchestra lately, especially when I'm working out. I don't know. What are you laughing at? When I'm working out. It's pretty obvious, I know. What else? I mean, I don't know how else to put it, but we don't listen to a lot of Christian music, to be honest. Do you guys want to touch on that? It's not like a...
I was gonna let you keep talking, Spence. I was just gonna add commentary every now and then. No, I was gonna say with we literally just
The great exchange.
we switched mics. I only use yellow. It's a thing. So yeah, I was gonna say on the Christian music thing, that's exactly right, and that's not an intentional thing. I think it's just that, well, I just don't think that. I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I think we don't naturally gravitate toward that music stylistically, like from a creative standpoint, not necessarily like lyrics and all that. Sometimes, yes, even the lyrics aren't that great. But in particular, I just think like for us, we've been influenced by, I would say, the majority of the music that we've been influenced by from the time that we were babies has been a lot of different artists and musicians that weren't necessarily Christian artists. And so I think that's perhaps why I've had this conversation with a lot of people, why when a lot of people hear our music, they say, oh, it doesn't really sound a whole lot like Christian music or worship music. And I think that's not an intentional thing that we're trying to do. It's just we write music that we love, and we're influenced creatively by a lot of artists who aren't Christian musicians. And so you put two and two together, and you're probably going to get something that doesn't sound like whatever other Christian music sounds like. That's not necessarily saying that that Christian music is bad. It's just saying that, at least for us, that we kind of naturally gravitate in a different direction. So, did you have something to add to that, Spence?
No.
Cool. Sweet. Anybody else? Music?
I just listen
It's on. You just got to really talk loud.
louder.
Louder.
Oh, okay, sweet.
Louder.
Sorry, I'm a mumbler. If you haven't noticed, so I got to work on that. I think I just been listening to M83 a lot, and then St. Lucia, where like those two, just got them on repeat. Those bass lines are really my jam.
Bass
so.
lines. Nate plays bass in the band, so.
It's funny. We could do like bands all day. So if you guys want to come know some good bands, come talk to us after. But I love a band right now called Gang of Youths, and like 20 other ones that you may or may not have heard of. So
We like music.
it's true.
It's cool. We enjoy it. So, how about some other questions? How are we doing on time? Do we need to wrap it up? We're doing all right. Great. Okay. One more question, maybe. Anybody got one?
Fire.
How about we hear from a lady? That sounds good. Sure.
I think there's kind of a thing that, I mean, you guys know there's kind of a thing about like being on stage that people kind of feel like it's like more special or something. And so I think there's a lot of people that desire that, not necessarily because they're well equipped to be doing that, but because it is like a position of perceived glory. And I think something that we can do to encourage people to not have that perspective is to be, first of all, like being in relationship with them and caring for them apart from just like using them for their musical talents to be a part of the church, but like actually being in relationship with them. And then also just encouraging them to be showing that they are willing to like faithfully serve in other areas of the church as well. Because that sometimes that will kind of be, I've seen that be like a cutoff point for people actually being like attending the church. It's like, oh, you're not going to put me on stage? Well, I'm not gonna go here then. And that's sad, but it's just a factor of people's hearts, and we all have those sinful desires to be glorified, and just trying to encourage each other through that. And so I think that's not necessarily like directly answering your question, but I think like getting to the heart of some of that stuff can be a little bit more helpful than necessarily trying to accommodate their desires, if that makes sense. So that'd be one thing I would say.
I feel like too, one thing that I have never had happen except one time. Anytime I've ever told like a singer, for instance, like, hey, I think that, even what Brian said, I think God has given us voices and he wants us to use them and to lead and to worship him with. And I think song is clearly a gift from God. But some people are better singers than other people. Some people are better musicians than other people. And in fact, being a musician, like a guitar player, like some people are better than others because they actually put the time and effort into getting really good at it. But I think that like maybe where we can go wrong is like using like the excellence language, because I think that creates it creates like something that like what Brian was talking about that is really dangerous, and that's like this idea of platforms. I know that we use that language, and I don't want to I've used that language a lot in the past, but since after like just being in particular, just reading through a lot of like Paul's letters, there's a word that he uses often, and that's influence. And I think that actually speaks truer and is more dignifying than a platform, because when someone is focused on, well, I need to be on this, when you close your eyes, you think of a platform, you probably think of a stage or something where someone's up above other people. And I think that there's something really strange about why it's not strange, it's actually very natural, like sinful, that we want people to look up to us and worship us in a lot of ways. We want to take the glory from God, but at the same time, I think when we talk about it as influence, it's like, oh, well, God's either giving you influence of 5 people, maybe your family, or 500 people. The number doesn't matter. What matters is that God loves you, he's redeemed you, he's given you himself, the Holy Spirit dwells in you, and the people that you have in your life are significant, and God's called you to be faithful to serving them in whatever capacity that looks like. And so when someone comes along and says, hey, I really think I need to be a musician in the band, it's like, well, you have the first conversation of maybe I don't know that this is really the right thing for you. I'm positive because I know that God, who created me, has given me confidence that and clarity in the ways that he wants me to serve him. What are some of those ways that you really feel like God has called you to serve him? And I think like every time I've had that conversation, with the exception of one time, as it's always wound up being a really great conversation. It's not awkward. We wound up like, whether it be with a girl who really wanted to sing, a guy who really wanted to play bass, whatever. And I think honestly, it's like, it's more about just having those conversations and building that relationship, because it is true. Like some people will leave, but when you think back, like this whole band thing is still pretty new, you know, like it's not really, it hasn't been happening that long in the church. And so we're actually trying something that we may find in like 50 years is actually really just hasn't worked that well. And we go back to just one person leading everybody and singing songs, which I think is still a really great thing. And in most cases, that person standing up there leading those songs, that one person is probably, hopefully, one of the best singers in the church doing that, right? Not always. I certainly went to a church where that was unfortunately not the case. A lot of accordion playing, but hey, I like the accordion. Hey. Brian just did one of his dad jokes. He said, "Accordion to what?" So you got it, dude. You're getting the slow clap there. You got the slow clap, the single slow clap. So I honestly, if you would, if you want to talk some more about that, because I know it's a little more specific, but I would just say as an encouragement to everyone, I think that it's way more dignifying to when you think of somebody who, like Bob, let's use him as an example. He's a guy who has written a book. How many? 1 million copies? Is that what it? I mean, that's insane, And so most people would say Bob has a platform. I would just say the opposite. I would say God has given Bob influence, just like he's given each one of us influence. And while Bob might have more responsibility and God may have given him more influence to steward, it doesn't make him more significant than any other person that God has redeemed. And I think that's pretty amazing that God gives us this equal ground, and we get to just operate as brothers and sisters, loving one another, showing dignity. We are all image bearers of God, and so we're not just Christians, but all of us are image bearers of God. So we, just like God loved us when we were messed up. And that's the same posture that we're meant to take, whether we have redeemed brothers and sisters or not, that really want to play in a band, that really want to participate, but it's really clear that there's something else going on there that doesn't necessarily have to be your job to get at the heart of it. But at the same time, I think as worship leaders, we should be really we should want to do that. Like, we should want to shepherd people, like not just musicians, but all people in the church. So, cool. Thank you, guys. We'll hang out here if you want to talk some more. So, Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate it. That's awesome. Yeah.